students, this is the instructions for your monochromatic project scale. This is the only one that has 4. The value scale on the first one has your 5 steps and your 5 blended. That's it. And the one after this has 2 even steps. But this one has 4 because we're going to create the monochromatic system, which is defined by tints, shades, and tones. If you've ever taken a painting class or a design class, you'll know that, or color theory class, that monochromatic schemes involved adding white, adding black, and adding gray to a hue. Now that hue is singular. You don't use any other color on the wheel except that one. And in this project you have a choice of the 12 on the wheel or brown, which is the middle of the wheel. So you have 13 options from your palette. Basically every 13 that we mixed from the get-go onto your palette. When you use the upper part of the palette, in other words, if you pick a image that is that system, you'll be using colors that have sort of olives and browns that happen when you add when you add black. But the rest of the palette, when you add black, they kind of stay similar in nature, only darker. Reds and greens are middle values. Yellows and everything on the top of the wheel is a high key, light value. Everything on the bottom of the wheel is purples and blues, and they're naturally dark anyway, so when you do a painting with those, you barely ever even need to use black. In fact, in general, you won't be using too much black. It takes over. So you'll decide where to put this palette into your painting. The image is a starting point. The image is a starting point for a monochromatic thought process, but you're going to be deciding what to leave white and how to use saturation. And the difference between regular paint and watercolor paint is that shades and tones are very much related, because gray exists by putting a darker value like black on a surface, so it shows through gray. Shades are adding black, but we can't add black hardcore like in other mediums. So black should not be opaque. It has to still be transparent. So by nature, your shades are also your tones. That's why we only have 2. Anyway, I want to show you the even steps and the blended. So this is my test sheet, always a test sheet here. I'm going to test my black and just see if it's not too dark. I can make it a little bit darker. Not too bad, a little bit more. Alright, as long as it's still transparent, that's fine. So now I can do my shades and tones combined. I have my pure black, even wash step, and you know I'm going to have to let it dry in between. So I will be able to do my middle gray version, which is called a chromatic gray, which is basically chroma, which is color inside. And this is also going to be what I use down here when I dampen that for an even wash. I can work on my even washes while I wait for these to dry, or even ideally, as you know, with even wash, you want to wait overnight. Or like lots of hours. See, I shouldn't have gone back, but anyway. Alright, there's that. Now I'm going to do yellow-orange as my hue, just because it does get those olives, and I want to show you what happens with those. Whatever your image is that you choose, you're going to do a palette towards that. So this is going to be my shades and tones. In other words, anytime I add black, it's creating a shade. Anytime I add gray, it's creating a tone. So I'm basically going to have that happen, but combined. Up here, I'm going to have my color to white of the paper. So that's saturation. So with each step, I'm going to have less saturation leading up to the white. I can't do this one, but I can do the one in between. If you're worried about it being correct, you can always wait and do the whole thing later, but this I feel pretty good about. This is the middle value, which is yellow, orange plus white supposedly, even though white is not really there. It's a step. I want to make sure I don't stay too dark too long. It's tricky because the value scales are harder to do when you have to let them dry in between. So you can't kind of gauge as well as you could. But now I can't do anything. This I'm going to leave blank. The top scale you're going to do, leave blank. So now when it dries, I'll come back and do this. In the interim, I can do this one, which is black and yellow orange together. But you know what? In the mid, since I don't want to contaminate it, I'm going to go ahead and dampen the scale. Maybe I'll just do one at a time. It's such a game of time, you know. It's like hit and miss. That's why so many people just don't have the patience for watercolor, because it's so finicky. But since I have this on my palette, I'm going to go ahead and do, whoops, sorry. I'm going to do my yellow orange into white. I'm going to nuance that into white using, like we did before, 2 different flat brushes. Whoops, that one's dirty. Well, that's not going to help me any. I'm going to feather this in. So not only does this give you your palette, but it also shows you technique. So you have options to blend, you have options to do hard edge glazing, you have options to do all the things in the technique toolbox, which are drip down and dry brush. And you know, realism is great, but you can also play with technique while you're in the process of doing realism. And each picture calls for something different, and each intuition that you have calls for something different. And never worry, because you know, doing something over is not that big of a deal. You know, it's just doing something over. So here we have our wet and wet. Now I have basically my hue, yellow orange, blended into white, which is it's tints and hue. It's going to be up here. And then down here I'm going to do shades, making sure this is still damp enough to do. As you've learned, no matter what you do with a brush, it's all dependent on the brush. You can twist it on anything. You can put paper towel, you can leave it alone, you can squeeze it out, you can use it as a sponge. It's a relationship that you develop. It's like your favorite burner on the stove. It's like your favorite tool in the toolbox, whatever it is. Okay, I'm going to try to get this blended into black, and that's going to create shades and tones. You can always come back and reiterate the hue or value on the edge back where it was, but we're just nuancing this together. So in the middle here, because this is on the top of the wheel color, you're going to get these kind of olive greens, really pretty. Some people don't choose yellow only because it's a little more difficult in a way, because you're getting these weird olive green kind of colors in here. But it just gives you another place to go. All right. Technically, I should wait overnight, but I want to complete this demo, so I'll see how I can do it without mushing together. And of course, you don't want lines like this. I made these lines really dark so you could see what I'm doing, but you can have these super light with the yellow carbon or just super light with the pencil. You're still getting that visual exercise. And always testing here. A little watery there. A little bit darker. And luckily I have a little time to do that because it's still a little bit damp, but it's a little similar to the one to the right, so. Another thing I'm considering is darkening. Well, no, this is enough. It's hard, but you know what? I think this is going to dry a little. This is pretty much dry, and this one's going to dry a little darker, so I don't think I need to go too much more in here. I don't want them to run together, but that looks pretty good. All right, so on this one, I'm going to go a little bit lighter. Only this one, I'm going to add a little bit of black in it. Let me do a warm up here because there we go. This one should have just a subtle amount of black in it. Okay. I don't want it to look like that, but I want it to be... Okay. It's starting to look green, which is really kind of the key here. Then this one will be more black and less yellow-orange. All the hues on the top get like this. Like, whoop, I should be doing this. It's like this olive green that starts to happen. That almost makes you feel like you have more than one hue happening. Okay, that's better. Okay, I gotta get more. So used to holding like 3 and 4 brushes in my hand from how I paint that I forget they're sitting there in my hand. Okay. A little more. And as you know, it should be completely dry overnight, but I just can't show it perfectly right here. Okay. All right, so here we have it. This is your warm-up for your monochromatic. I need to make that one better. So ideally, you know, you'd wait overnight before you do it. Okay. All right, I'm a perfectionist. What can I say? It's not quite what I wanted, but a little more yellow in there. But with watercolor, you've got to just let it go sometimes. Okay, I'm happier now. When this dries, it'll look better. All right. Oh, I'm so much happier I did that. All right, that's it. That's your warm-up for your monochromatic scales. Let me hold it up because it looks all shiny like that. I still have issues here, but that's the deal.